My wife thought I was poor. For years, she believed I was just an average man, struggling to make ends meet, trying to survive paycheck to paycheck. She thought I had nothing, no savings, no future, no real value. And the truth is, I let her believe that. I watched her slowly change, the way she spoke to me, the way she looked at me, the respect that slowly disappeared over time. But I never said a word, because I had a secret so big that if she knew the truth, everything would change overnight. And eventually, she did find out, just not in the way she expected. My name is Ethan Miller. I'm 62 years old, and everything started long before my wife ever doubted me. I wasn't born into wealth. I didn't grow up with opportunities handed to me. My father worked as a mechanic, and my mother was a school cleaner. We lived in a small rented house, and every dollar mattered. From a young age, I understood something most people don't learn until much later in life. Money is fragile. One bad decision, and it disappears. So, I grew up careful, disciplined, focused on building something stable. In my 20s, I started working in a small logistics company. It wasn't glamorous work, long hours, low pay, but I stayed consistent. While others spent their income on comfort, I saved. While others chased quick success, I focused on long-term growth. Years later, that mindset changed everything. I began investing. At first, it was small amounts, then gradually, larger ones. Stocks, real estate, business shares. I didn't chase risky opportunities. I studied, learned, waited, and slowly, my investments started growing. By my 40s, I had built something most people wouldn't expect just by looking at me. Wealth, not flashy wealth, not the kind you show off, but real, quiet, powerful financial security. And that's when I made a decision that would shape the rest of my life. I decided to keep it a secret, not from everyone, but from the world, including my future wife. I met Sarah when I was 48. She was charming, confident, and full of energy. She worked at a retail store and had a very different outlook on life than I did. She enjoyed spending, living in the moment, buying things that made her feel happy. At first, I didn't mind. In fact, I admired her ability to enjoy life without overthinking everything. We started dating, and like most relationships in the beginning, everything felt perfect. She saw me as a simple man, someone stable, reliable, but not particularly successful. And I never corrected her. I drove an old car, wore simple clothes, lived in a modest apartment, because I didn't want someone to love me for my money. I wanted to be sure that if someone chose to be with me, it was for me, not what I had. After 2 years, we got married, and for a while, things were good. But slowly, something began to change. It started with small comments. Why don't we ever go on real vacations? Why can't we move into a better house? Do you ever think about doing more with your life? At first, I ignored it. I thought it was normal. But over time, those small comments turned into something else. Frustration, disappointment, and eventually, disrespect. She started comparing me to other men, friends, co-workers, even strangers. Look at them, she would say. They're actually doing something with their lives. Each word felt like a quiet cut, not loud, not explosive, but constant. And I still said nothing, because the truth was, I was doing more than she could imagine. I just wasn't showing it. Years passed, and the gap between us grew. She became more distant, more impatient, more critical, while I became quieter, more observant, watching everything, listening carefully, not reacting. Because deep down, I knew something. This wasn't about money. This was about who she thought I was. And one day, everything changed. It happened on an ordinary evening. Nothing special, nothing dramatic. At least, that's how it started. Sarah walked into the living room holding her phone. Her expression was different, confused, suspicious. "Ethan," she said slowly. I looked up at her. "Yes?" She hesitated for a moment. Then she turned the phone screen toward me. "I think there's something you need to explain." And in that moment, I realized something had finally slipped. My secret was no longer completely hidden, and the life she thought she understood was about to fall apart. The moment Sarah held that phone out to me, something inside me went completely still. Not panic, not fear, just a quiet realization. The kind that tells you a moment you've been avoiding for years has finally arrived. I looked at the screen. It was an email. At first glance, it didn't seem like much. Just another notification. But then I saw the sender, a financial firm, one I had been working with for over a decade. And then I saw the numbers. Large numbers. Numbers that didn't match the life Sarah believed I lived. She lowered the phone slowly. Her eyes locked on mine. "Why is a company like this emailing you?" she asked. Her voice wasn't loud. It was controlled. But underneath it, I could hear something else. Suspicion. I leaned back slightly in my chair, buying myself a few seconds. "I forgot to log out of my email on the tablet," I said calmly. That much was true. Sarah had been using it earlier. "And?" she pressed. "Emit Hergose. It's just investments." The moment the word left my mouth, I saw her expression change. "Investments?" she repeated, as if the idea didn't fit into her understanding of me. "How much?" she asked. I didn't answer right away, not because I didn't want to, but because I knew. Once I said it, there would be no going back. For years, I had carefully built a version of myself in her eyes. Simple, average, safe. And now that version was cracking. "It's not important," I said quietly. Her eyebrows tightened. "Not important?" she said, her voice rising slightly. "Ethan, I just saw numbers that don't look not important." She stepped closer. "How much money are we talking about?" I stood up slowly. "Sarah, no," she cut me off. "Don't do that. Don't avoid the question." For a moment, the room felt smaller, heavier. Then I made a decision. "Enough," I said calmly. She blinked. "What?" "Enough that we were never struggling," I continued. "Enough that we didn't have to worry about bills. Enough that I could have changed our lifestyle at any time." Silence. Complete silence. Her face lost color slightly as she processed what I had just said. "You're joking," she whispered. I didn't respond, because I wasn't. She took a step back. "So all those times," she began, her voice shaking. "All those times I asked you about money." "I told you we were fine," I said. "You told me we were barely getting by," she snapped. Her frustration finally broke through. "I thought we were struggling, Ethan. I thought you just didn't have ambition." Her words hit harder than she probably realized, but I stayed calm. "I wanted to see something," I said quietly. She stared at me. "What?" "I wanted to see if you would stay, even if you believed I had nothing." The room went silent again, but this silence felt different. Heavier, more uncomfortable. Her eyes searched my face. "So this was a test?" she asked slowly. "No," I said. "It wasn't a test." "Then what was it?" she demanded. "It was the truth," I replied. "Just not the full version of it." She shook her head, almost in disbelief. "For years, you let me think you were a failure." The word hung in the air between us. Failure. That's how she had seen me. Not just recently, but for a long time. "I never said I was a failure," I replied calmly. "You didn't have to," she shot back. "You acted like one." That was the moment everything became clear. Not the money, not the secret, but how she truly saw me. All those small comments over the years, all those comparisons, they weren't temporary frustration. They were her real thoughts. And now they were finally out in the open. I walked past her and toward the window. Outside, the street was quiet. Just another normal evening. But inside, nothing felt normal anymore. Behind me, I could hear her breathing, uneven, confused. "You lied to me," she said finally. I turned back toward her. "I didn't lie," I said. "I just didn't tell you everything." "That's the same thing," she replied sharply. "No," I said. "It's not." She crossed her arms. "Then explain it to me." I took a slow breath. I grew up with nothing, I said. I spent my life building something stable, and I didn't want someone to be with me because of money. Her expression softened slightly, but only for a moment. So you decided to pretend to be poor? She asked. I decided to live simply, I corrected. And let me believe the worst about you? She said. That question, I didn't have a perfect answer for it, because the truth was, I had seen it happen. Slowly, over time, and I had chosen not to stop it. I watched how you treated me, I admitted. Her eyes narrowed. And you said nothing? I wanted to understand, I said quietly. Understand what? She asked. I looked directly at her. Who you really are. That was the moment everything shifted. Because now, it wasn't just about my secret anymore. It was about her, and the way she had treated me when she thought I had nothing. Her voice dropped when she spoke again. So what now? She asked. I didn't answer immediately, because the truth was, I had been asking myself that same question for a long time, and now I finally had my answer. For a long moment after Sarah asked, "So what now?" neither of us spoke. The room felt heavier than it ever had before, not because of the money, not because of the secret, but because, for the first time in years, everything between us was finally real. No assumptions, no illusion, just truth. I walked back toward the couch and sat down slowly, resting my hands together. Sarah didn't sit. She stayed standing, arms crossed, like she was trying to protect herself from something she didn't fully understand yet. I need to know something, I said calmly. She looked at me. What? All those years, I continued. When you thought I had nothing, what did you really think of me? The question caught her off guard. I already told you, she said quickly. I thought you lacked ambition. I shook my head slightly. No, not the safe answer. The real one. She hesitated. For a moment, I thought she might avoid it, but then she sighed and looked away. I thought, she began slowly, I thought you were settling. Settling? I repeated. Yes, she said. Like you didn't want more from life. Like you were okay being average. Average, that word didn't hurt the way it used to. Not anymore, because now I understood something she didn't. Average wasn't about money. It was about perspective. And that disappointed you, I said. She nodded slightly. I didn't marry someone to struggle forever, Ethan. I watched her carefully. And yet, I said quietly, you stayed. That made her pause, because I thought things would change, she admitted. And when they didn't, her silence answered the question. I leaned back again, taking a slow breath. You know what's interesting? I said. She looked at me, confused. For years, I thought I was protecting myself, I continued, by hiding what I had, by making sure no one valued me for the wrong reasons. And? She asked. And I was right, I said calmly. That sentence hit her harder than anything else I had said. Her expression tightened. So that's it? She said. You proved your point? This was never about proving a point, I replied. Then what was it about? She demanded. It was about truth, I said. And now we finally have it. The room went quiet again. But this time, it felt different, clearer, like something had finally been exposed that couldn't be hidden anymore. Sarah slowly walked over and sat down across from me. Her posture had changed, less defensive, more uncertain. I didn't know, she said softly. I nodded. I know. If I had known, she started. I raised my hand slightly. But you didn't, I said. She stopped, because we both understood what that meant. Her actions weren't based on reality. They were based on what she believed about me. And those beliefs had shaped everything. I wasn't trying to hurt you, she added quietly. I believe that, I said. But you did. She lowered her eyes. I know. For the first time in this entire conversation, I saw something genuine in her expression. Regret. Not for the money, but for how she had treated me. Still, regret doesn't erase years, and it doesn't rebuild trust. I need to ask you something else, I said. She looked up again. What? If nothing had changed, I said slowly. If you never saw that email, would you still be here with me 10 years from now? The question was simple, but the answer wasn't. She opened her mouth slightly, then closed it again. Her silence was enough. I nodded slowly. That's what I thought. Tears formed in her eyes. Ethan, she whispered, but I didn't let her finish. I'm not angry, I said calmly, and that was the truth. I wasn't. Anger had faded a long time ago. What I felt now was something else. Clarity. I just understand things differently now, I continued. She wiped her eyes quickly. So what does that mean for us? That question, it was the one that mattered most. I stood up again and walked toward the hallway, then stopped and turned back to face her. For years, I said, we've been living in a version of this marriage that wasn't real. She shook her head slightly. It was real to me. Was it? I asked. That question made her freeze. Because deep down, she knew. She hadn't been seeing me. Not really. She had been seeing a version of me she had created, a version she judged, compared, and eventually lost respect for. I don't think you ever truly saw me, I said quietly. Her tears fell now, silently. I'm seeing you now, she said, but I shook my head gently. No, I replied. Now you're seeing what I have. That difference, it was everything, and we both knew it. The silence that followed felt final, not dramatic, not explosive, just final. Because some truths don't break things loudly. They just slowly remove everything that was holding them together. And in that moment, I realized something I had been avoiding for a long time. This wasn't about money anymore. This was about whether what we had was ever real to begin with. The silence between us didn't break. It just stretched longer than any argument we had ever had. Because this wasn't an argument. There was nothing left to argue about. Everything that needed to be said had already been said. Sarah sat there, quietly crying, while I stood a few steps away, feeling something I hadn't expected. Not anger, not sadness, just a strange sense of calm. Like I had finally reached the end of something I had been trying to understand for years. I don't want this to end, she said suddenly. Her voice was soft, almost fragile. I looked at her, but I didn't respond right away, because I knew those words didn't come from the same place they once would have. They came after the truth, after the money, after everything had already changed. Why? I asked calmly. She looked up at me, surprised by the question. Because I love you, she said. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I searched her face, trying to understand if those words still meant what they used to. Do you? I asked quietly. Her expression tightened. Yes, she said. But you didn't respect me, I replied. That stopped her, because she knew it was true. I was frustrated, she said. I didn't understand. No, I interrupted gently. You understood exactly what you believed. She went silent again, and that silence said more than anything else. I walked back into the living room and sat down across from her once more. I'm not saying you're a bad person, I continued. But the way you saw me, it changed everything. Tears continued falling down her face. I can change, she said. I believed her. People can change. Life forces them to. But change doesn't erase the past. It doesn't rebuild something that was slowly broken over years. It's not about changing, I said. Then what is it about? She asked desperately. It's about truth, I replied, and whether what we had was built on it. She shook her head, trying to hold on to something. It was real to me, she said again. But it wasn't complete, I answered. That was the difference, and that difference mattered more than anything else. For years, she had loved a version of me that wasn't fully real, and for years, I had allowed that version to exist. So in a way, we had both been living a lie. I should have told you, I admitted. That made her look up. What? The truth, I said. From the beginning. She didn't expect that. I thought I was protecting myself, I continued. But maybe I was just delaying something inevitable. Her voice softened. So this is your fault too? I nodded slightly. In some ways, yes. Because relationships don't fall apart from just one side. They break slowly, piece by piece, choice by choice. And we had both made those choices. I wish I had known, she whispered. I looked at her. Would it have changed how you treated me? She didn't answer, not because she didn't want to, but because she couldn't. And that was the answer. I stood up again and walked toward the window. Outside, the world was moving like nothing had changed. Cars passing by, lights in other apartments, people living their lives. But inside this room, everything had changed. I think we both need to be honest about something, I said. She looked at me, waiting. This marriage isn't what we thought it was. Her face broke a little more. But it can be, she said quickly. We can fix it. I turned to face her. Maybe, I said, and I meant it. But then I added something else. But not like this. She froze. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, we can't pretend anymore. Her breathing became uneven. So what are you saying? I took a deep breath. For the first time in years, we need to step back and see things clearly. Tears streamed down her face. You're leaving? She asked. I didn't answer immediately. Because this wasn't about walking out in anger. This wasn't about revenge. It was about clarity. I think we both need space, I said finally. Her shoulders dropped slightly, like she had been holding on to something that was now slipping away. For how long? She asked quietly. I don't know, I answered honestly. And that was the truth, because some decisions don't come instantly. They take time, reflection, understanding. And as I walked past her toward the hallway, I realized something important. For years, I had been hiding my truth, and she had been reacting to what she believed was reality. Now, for the first time, we were both standing in the truth. And sometimes, that's the moment when everything either begins again or finally comes to an end. The next morning, the house felt different, quiet. Not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the kind that comes after something breaks. Sarah stayed in the bedroom. I stayed in the living room. Two people in the same home, but no longer in the same place. I made coffee, sat by the window, and stared outside for a long time. For years, I had built my life on control. Control over my finances, control over my emotions, control over what people knew about me. But now, for the first time, I had no control over what would happen next. And, strangely, I was okay with that. Around mid-morning, I heard the bedroom door open, soft footsteps. Then Sarah walked into the living room. Her eyes were tired, red from crying, but there was something different about her. Not anger, not frustration, just honesty. Can we talk? She asked quietly. I nodded.